All right, I think we are live. Hello, everyone. Let's see the chat. Hey, good morning, or afternoon, or night. Juan Skite. How you doing? All right. Just finishing up the setup here, and we're gonna go ahead and get started with this guy again. All right. Cool. Let me see. Do you guys can you guys see the stream? Anyone in Facebook Live and on YouTube? Let me know. So far, I can only see comments from Twitch. Just want to make sure everything is working fine. All right. We'll give it a few minutes. So today we're gonna go ahead and start detailing this guy. I'm gonna refine some of these shapes. We are gonna talk about retopology very briefly and projection of the details that we have created. Essentially, just taking this guy, which is pretty sketchy, and turning it into something that that looks a little bit more polished than this. And I have a few techniques and a few tricks that I think you're gonna find useful using dynamics and a few other things that I just being again using dynamics in a slightly different way, not just to create cloth or yeah, any drapery. So I think the tricks, let's call it tricks, that I have for you guys today might be interesting. And I mean, the idea is to give you an idea of how you can use dynamics in a different way. So that's the aim here. So I'm gonna go ahead and start with hang on, Facebook's not working. Hang on, let me just double check. It should work. You know, it's working fine. Don't know why I cannot see the rest of the chat. Anyway, let's continue. And if anything, I'll have to check the chat from the YouTube page directly. Anyway, if you have any questions, of course, put it in the chat. I'll be happy to answer those. So I'm gonna go ahead and start by refining some of the shapes of this guy here, of the main body. Oops. And that's just gonna be a pretty straightforward process when I get rid of the polypin for the time being. And you'll see this is still a Dynamesh object. It's pretty sketchy. So this is the type of thing that I'm gonna aim for today, like refining this bit. So I'm gonna bring in the damp standard brush. I have symmetry enabled, and I'm just gonna go ahead and refine this. More than refining, I would call this a second pass on. Yeah, well, it's not refinement, but a second pass on the sketch in a way, just to make sure that, you know, certain lines are sharp enough. We don't have, for example, an indication of the nostrils, which we might add very quickly like this, and that sort of thing. But I'm not gonna get into many details, just because again this is a pretty sketchy mesh. So I'll wait until I have a cleaner mesh so that I can start adding those details. And I'm going to show you a pretty neat trick for the eyelids. So right now we don't have any. Cool. So it is working. All right, no worries. It might have been just a delay. Cool things. Oh, that's a hard name to pronounce. Is it it's Russian, or well, Russian characters. All right, like I said, I'm not gonna go into too many details. I will do this after, once I have a cleaner mesh. Yeah, I think this one is okay. I mean, we could clean it up a little bit, but I think it will be okay. So let's go ahead and do that. So once I have the, usually this is what I do with this type of concepts, right? Once I have these ready to go, as in I'm happy with the overall silhouette, and that's why I have on the left hand side and the right hand side kind of like references for the, you know, the overall silhouette, the main proportions and all of that. Then I can start refining it. So this, the first step for refining this, if I'm gonna, you know, try to, you know, post these later and all of that, is to move away from Dynamesh or Sculptris Pro and get into a cleaner topology, right? Cool. Anastasia, yeah, that's what I thought. I mean, I cannot read. I could read a little bit, but it takes me a long time. And I understand a little bit, but it's not. My partner, she's from Ukraine, so. Я не говорю по-русски, но я не понимаю немного. All right. So what I'm gonna do is go ahead and duplicate this base mesh. So duplicate that, and I'm gonna hide the original. Let's go ahead and rename this one as clean, or let's call it retopo. Cool. So obviously this is the same thing, it's just a duplicate. And all I'm going to do really, I guess I can show you a couple more things. Now let's see what this one gives us. To be honest, if I want to have more control over the retopology, well, one way is to just do it manually, but another way is to control it with polygroups. But I think this one is a relatively simple mesh, and it should give us a pretty decent result. There's actually different ways to control it. So like in anything, ZBrush allows you to control it in different ways. So if you actually have, let's say, with a damp standard brush, if you go ahead and just do this type of thing, just like emphasize this line and maybe do another one here like that. Obviously it's going to be part of the remesh, so ZBrush is going to try to create that line using topology, but it's going to try to respect that. So in a way, it's kind of like creating markings for polyloops. I usually don't do this, but you know, it's possible. The other way to control the remesh is to turn this on so you can see a little bit better. It's pretty dense mesh. You could do this, right? And then assign a different polygroup. So now when you click on, if you leave, hang on, why do I have this? All right. So if you click on keep groups, when you do the series mesh, ZBrush is going to try to maintain, or it will maintain a loop around here, an edge loop, right? So you could potentially do that if you want to have, like, you know, cleaner loops, let's say around the tail and that sort of thing. In this case, like I said, I'm pretty sure it's going to give us a decent topology. So let's just try this out, and if not, we go with a more controlled approach. How do you add the polypaint silhouette in the right hand side? I missed that early lecture. I didn't. I just did that today before I started. That's just a cam view. You can just go with whatever you have selected or whatever you have visible in the canvas. Go to preference, click on make cam view under the cam view, and that's it. It will create, it will take shots every, I think, 8 shots around and at different degrees. So I'm not sure how many actually. Yeah. So 40, what 40, yeah, 40 different images. Is it 5? Yeah, 5 by 8. So 40 different images at different angles, and you will just put it there. Oh, hey Alex, how you doing? All right, so let's go ahead and do that. I'm gonna click on half. You guys can see this? Cool, yeah. So I have the tools from the ZBrush. Unless I have to do something very specific, I don't need to go into the ZBrush tools. I can do everything from these settings that I have here, which are have, adapt, ZBrush, and keep groups. So I don't have any groups, I don't have any specific edges for hard surface or anything, so I'm gonna ignore all of this and just click on ZBrush. And I also have symmetry enabled, so ZBrush is gonna keep this symmetrical. All right. How many RAM do I have? I don't know. I think 32 or no, 64. I can't remember, to be honest. There's actually a guide in the ZBrush Guides website that has all the specs of my computer, how I build it, a review of the processor that I use, and all of that. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, it has a list as well, like, and where to find it, so you can have a look at that. I can't remember, to be honest. It's a powerful computer. I just don't pay attention to that unless I start to feel that, you know, I need it. But yeah, I don't remember. Sorry. Hey Arnold, greetings from Poland. Nice. Is there such program in the mobile phone like this? No. There's something, Nomad Sculpt or Nomad something. I've seen some ZBrush artists using it, and it's pretty cool. I'm gonna do another ZBrush while I speak, and I'm gonna keep just remeshing until I reduce this poly count. Yeah, so I've seen a few ZBrush artists that use Nomad. I know Steven Anderson, he's used it. Who else I've seen using it? Oh, Miguel Guerrero as well. So I don't know if it's for the iPhone or for the iPad. Not entirely sure. Hey Sadikus, better to zero mesh from high detail or decimate first? Do you mean if you should start the remeshing process from a very high detail model, like I had there? It was pretty dense. It is, I guess you could decimate it. It's just an extra step really, but I prefer to just wait and it would do it. So this is starting to look a little bit better. The flow of the topology is looking good. There's some areas like this that I could manually fix, but I can just use the smooth brush to smooth that out. And I wonder if this is actually open geometry, which is weird. Let's do another ZBrush and let's pay attention to what's happening on this area. Should work. Oh yeah, so there's some gaps in there. So let's just close those holes. Yeah, smooth that out. Let's give it a single polygroup and let's check. And those holes sometimes are the result of using Dynamesh in certain areas. It's weird that it happened there, but just do a quick check. Everything else seems to be working fine, so let's do another ZBrush. Keep an eye on this area. There we go. A lot better. Alright, so I think this looks pretty cool, pretty decent. Sometimes what I like to do, just to test the integrity of the topology, it's not like this is gonna be for animation or anything, but if I wanted to, what I like to do is just test the polygroups by creating polygroups using the select lasso. So if you use the select lasso, you hold Control and Shift, you can actually select a poly loop. Right, so let's say around here I can just hold Control and Shift and click on one of the edges, and that will create or select the poly loop. So if it goes, let's turn double on. So if it goes all around, that's a nice continuity of that topology. So I can now go ahead and do auto group. Not that I really going to need the polygroups at all in this case, but or maybe I will. But it's just a way to test it. So the same thing here. Auto group. So in this case, it didn't do a great job. No, it should have done. Should have. Auto group. Interesting. So it is not connected, or is it? No, it's not connected, and it's not letting me polygroup it. That's weird. Let's see. Oh, there we go. Auto group it. So yep, that's working fine. There's a I think in this case the rest is working fine. Alright, I think it works fine as it is. Let's just do a quick polygroup for everything, and let's go ahead and transfer those details that we had in the previous one into this one. What's the shortcut to create polygroup? Control W. Cool. Alrighty. So let's bring in the other one. Let's get out of solo mode. Turn everything off except the original. So now I have the retuple. Let's just name it. Let's call this one sketch. Not that we have a lot of details in this one, but we can project some of those volumes to recover them, right? So the idea is just to select the retopology, which is the one that we just created. Let's turn polyframe so that you can see that, right? And we have the sketch visible. All I'm going to do is, actually turn on polypaint so that we can also transfer the polypaint. And I'm just going to leave the geometry and the color on, and those tools should be on the project here for you guys. So on the subtool palette, go to the project, and those are the tools that I have here at the bottom. I want to click on project all, and yes, would you like to? Yep. So I'm going to polypaint that. Now I can turn off polyframe. It's going to be a little bit hard to see. Let's just leave it as it is. All right, so I did a projection on the first level. I'm going to go ahead and subdivide this, do another projection, subdivide, project, subdivide, project. Right? You could subdivide them a few times and then project everything. I prefer to do it one step at a time, so that I project everything in the very low res mesh. So we alter those few polygons, and then as I subdivide, I project, and project again. Is it possible to rewatch this stream later? Yeah, absolutely. All of the streams are recorded, and they will be in the Pixologic website. Also, if you go to the ZBrush Guides website, at the top menu there should be a link called ZBrush live streams, and you can find them all in there as well. Good evening. I'm new to ZBrush and I don't know much about the program itself yet. Does it have automatic retopology, something like that? Yes, that's called ZRemesher. You prefer to do the project divide combo, or what? Experiment with the project history feature? Yes, I mean, like I said, in ZBrush there are many different ways to do it. Depending on the project, I would choose one method over the other. In my general workflow, this is what I do. So now I can go in solo mode, and I have a cleaner mesh, right? I have 4 levels of subdivision. I have the polypaint and everything, so everything is working. I'm gonna select this smooth brush, turn off RGB, and I'll show you another method in just a second. Turn off polypaint, right? So this is the clean mesh, but you see we still have to do some cleanup to do. So just with a smooth brush, I'm gonna clean this up a little bit. and I'm probably going to remove some of the high subdivision level, to be honest, because this is too high at the moment and I don't really need that to start adding details. So I'm just doing a quick pass with the smooth brush. Because I have polypaint, I also turned off the RGB for the smooth brush so that I can smooth this without, you know, smudging or softening the transition of the colors. The smooth brush with RGB enable works as a blurring tool for the RGB or for the polypaint. Alrighty, so yep, that looks good. So I'm gonna go ahead and return to something like the yeah, let's go for 2. So I'm gonna delete higher, so we still have something pretty decent in terms of it's a good balance, a good compromise between, you know, indication of details of like what could potentially be secondary forms and a cleaner mesh. And the reason I do that, or the reason I'm doing this, is just to show you a very cool tip. Let's have a look. ZBrush Prime. Yeah, I'm gonna show you, like I said, another technique. Nice, cool. Felipe, where are you from? I'm originally from Colombia. Any chance to see your ZBrush Blender pipeline? Not in this channel. So this channel, it's mainly for ZBrush. So that's why the session is called "Make It Happen in ZBrush." So everything that I do is ZBrush related. But yeah, I might do a few extra tutorials later on. I'm you know, I don't know Blender a lot, like too much in too much depth. I'm still learning it, but what I know or what I've learned so far, I'm actually creating an update to my online course, The Extra Mile, which just closed yesterday. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, maybe that would be a good way. Just because of the time, I don't have a lot of time nowadays. Zero measure, yeah. All right. So the other thing, just to show you another technique, let's just bring in a sphere, and I'm just gonna dynamesh that, maybe with a smaller brush size. Right. So I can take a move brush, maybe. Right. So if I were to just start a new creature very quickly with a dynamesh sphere. Let's do just a quick creature face or something like that. And I'll just show you another technique for retopology. That, depending, again, a lot of the things that I do, and sometimes when I try to answer questions, I tend to branch out a little bit, because there's like not a lot of I mean, I can give you the answers, but they will only work for specific workflows. You know what I mean? It's not like one answer suits everything. So it depends on the style that you're trying to create. It depends on the level of details that you want to achieve. It has a lot of things, a lot of parts that are playing. Alright, I'm not gonna do an entire face, but I want to do something that, you know, it's not just a sphere, so that you can actually see that this process that I'm going to show you works with a more complex shape. Again, nothing special, but this should work. I mean, it has an indication of what this creature or alien would look like. Enough to do a, you know, a remesh. So it's a sketchy mesh, sketchy object, and it should be enough to do a quick zero mesh. All right, let's assume that this is the blocking of a creature or an alien or something that you want to do, and as you can see, it's pretty sketchy. Obviously, you can work in a higher resolution with Dynamesh. So I have a tool or a macro that I built called Dyna to subd, right? So what this is going to do is basically freeze the current subdivision level or freeze the current state of the model, do a zero measure, unfreeze everything, and then project obviously those details when it does the unfreezing, if that makes sense. So probably, because I want to go through all the things, I'm not going to have time today to explain that process behind the scenes, but very briefly, in case you're familiar with this with these tools, what ZBrush is going to be doing when I run this macro, which is a custom macro that I built for myself, is take the current mesh, actually subdivide it like once or twice, and so it's going to generate a lot more resolution. It's going to freeze that subdivision level, and then with the once the subdivision level is frozen, it's going to do a quick zero measure, and then once I have that zero measure, automatically the macro is going to unfreeze those subdivisions, and it's also going to project, because it frozen, it has the subdivision frozen, is going to project them all back on. So all of that happens automatically, but you can do it manually. Anyway, my point is, let's just duplicate that. Once I have this and I want to start working or keep refining this concept within a more refined or a cleaner mesh or a cleaner topology, I'll bring my macro and I click Dyna to subd, and watch what's going to happen. Just let it process, and that's it. So in a click, it goes through all that steps that I showed you. It gives me a smoother mesh, but I have subdivision levels. So now I can go to the lowest one, turn on polyframe, and you'll see it is a nicer piece of topology, right? So if you compare this with this, right? I jump from a Dynamesh object to a cleaner mesh. I'm not saying that this is going to be the final base mesh that I'm going to use, but it's it doesn't have those triangles basically that Dynamesh gives me. So I have a lot of options now to start refining with a more control and more polish. The approach of sketching is more controlled in a way, and that's just one single click, right? So that is definitely an option, and this is what I use sometimes. Again, it's depending on the process. So now I can, now that I have more subdivision, not more subdivision, a cleaner mesh, then I should be able to approach this sketching process and the refinement of the volumes with a bit more care than with the Dynamesh. So let's blobby in a way with less artifacts. So all of these, it's a little bit more control, just because the base mesh that I'm using to sketch is cleaner. That's all. But again, it doesn't mean that this would be the final topology that I will use. In fact, I can just simply delete higher, right? Do, let's say, something like this, kind of like sketching a horn or something. I don't know. Even bring in Sculptris Pro, which will ultimately ruin this topology because it's just gonna add these details. Right? So now I'm just using Dynamesh to add, sorry, not Dynamics, Sculptris Pro, to add these details, but I ruined that topology. But because I'm still sketching, I'm just gonna click on Dyna to subd again, and ZBrush is gonna go through the same process again. It's going to subdivide everything, freeze the subdivision level, run a zero measure, unfreeze, project, and it gives me again another clean mesh that I can keep working on. So zero measure is not just to achieve the final topology and the final mesh or whatever. It's another sketching tool, or you can use it as a sketching tool, right? So I can just, oops, I've been using Sculptris Pro. That's not what I wanted. Not in this case, right? Anyway, so hopefully you get the idea. Depending on the workflow, depending on what I'm trying to do, the tools are going to vary, but there is 5, 10 different ways to do the same thing in ZBrush. What program do you usually use for rendering? Have you ever used Blender for that purpose? Yes, Everson. So again, for me, I don't have like a specific pipeline or a specific workflow. I use whatever works for me and whatever works for the project that I'm working on, and that's really how I teach my workflow in the Extra Mile. Is if you actually, I don't know if you're familiar with the Extra Mile, the course that I have online, but if you look at the amazing work that the students are doing, it's not like there's no one actually that has done the character that I do as a demo, and that is a reflection of how the course is structured. So I'm more concerned about the workflows and the methodology. So basically, once you learn the basics, like the core of the different software, and just thinking a bit about the 3D in that sense, then you can just run with it and do whatever you want. And that's the whole idea. So just enabling other people and other artists to do what they want with whatever tools. So I don't think about when I'm working on a project, I don't think, oh, this is going to be rendered in Keyshot or this is going to be rendered in Maya. It depends on the project, depends on whatever tools suits that project or whatever I think is going to be best. If it is just, for example, a quick, if I had to answer your question more succinctly, I think if it is just a quick sketch, I would just probably enable Keyshot here and do quick BPR render as a work in progress. If I want to do something more realistic, perhaps I would use Maverick, but then I will also, I could use Marmoset. It really depends on the project. I don't have a specific tool, and again, that's something else that I quite like, which is tried different things as well. So sorry, I don't know if that answered the question, but if I have a favorite one, I would say for prototyping, Marmoset is one of the best tools at the moment for me. It just allows me to see a very good visuals in real time. Otherwise, yeah, I've tried Blender. In fact, one of the latest projects that I posted on my ArtStation, the Zibotuki, which we did in ZBrush Live, it's rendered in Blender with cycles and Eve. But my favorite tool at the moment is Maverick, just because the lighting tools are fantastic, and for me, lighting is what makes or breaks a render at the end. So yeah, hopefully that answered the question. How often do you do clay polish? When I'm doing sketches, quite often. Not in this case, I haven't done it, but I do it often, so that's why I have it here. Thanks, Bruno. Thank you so much, man. Hey, Halmon, Extra Miler here. What's your name? Because again, I don't know your YouTube taglines or internet names. Cool. Yes, next Friday. Next Friday we're gonna be with the amazing, the one and only Daniel Bell. We're gonna be doing some cool stuff in his channel, which is absolutely fantastic. I would definitely encourage you guys to check it out. Let me just let me just show you what I'm going to be doing next, and then we keep talking about it, because yeah, otherwise we're not gonna do anything today. All right, so what I'm gonna do with this guy, this is the remeshed version. I'm gonna create some wrinkles and essentially creating some compression folds of the skin of the creature using dynamics, and that's a trick that I think is really cool. Let's go ahead and do that. Open up that tab and I have the dynamics palette. So this is a tip that you can use in many different ways. I just found it really useful for what I'm going to show you. So I'm going to get closer here, and with the dynamics tab enabled, let's see, 64,000 polygons. I'm just going to keep an eye on the overall polygon count here, just because I have a maximum allowance of points in my dynamics of 250. I can increase that, but I wouldn't advise doing this unless you have a supercomputer. So 250,000 polygons, so I need to keep that number below that. So this number needs to be below that, basically. And I'm gonna go ahead and turn this inflate, and what else? That's it, just the inflate. So what the inflate is going to be doing, which is very different from the normal inflate. So if I bring in my inflate slider, which you guys find on the deformation palette, and you go, where is it, inflate here, you go like this, you basically end up with a blobby, fat mini dragon, right? Because what ZBrush is doing in this case is treating every single polygon the same way, and is expanding or pushing those faces along their normals equally. Whereas with this inflate is literally like if you just pump air into this, and it's kind of like an inflatable, creature. Because it's using dynamics, it's not going to be the same in every single area. So I'm going to go ahead and click simulation, and I'm going to stop it as well at some point. So let's simulate. Whoops, don't need gravity. Let's do it again. Right? So you see it's very different than the inflate. I'm gonna try a couple of things. So if I subdivide this, no, I just went overboard. So do it again. I'm gonna do this with 0.7 so that it doesn't do it as fast. All right, and I'm just like having a look at what result this gives me when I increase the iterations a bit more. Let's try that again. Okay, and if I turn the firmness to 2, I think 3 is fine. All right, let's go ahead and do that. Perfect. Obviously, this doesn't look great. I'm just having a look at the result that I get in certain areas. So the main focus for this trick would be these areas of the kind of like the shoulder, where the arm gets into the body. So look how natural and how cool these folds look, right? So this is what I want to try to achieve, but obviously the rest doesn't really work. So I was just testing which sort of values in the dynamics palette work for getting this thing right. But now I'm gonna undo that, and before I run the simulation, I'm gonna go ahead and, oh, by the way, you've noticed, maybe you have noticed that in my current UI I have some blank spaces, like here, and these ones like this. Some of these are intentional, some of them is because I haven't actually gone through the process of arranging it again, but some of them are intentional because you can actually move the UI around. So this is completely outside of what I was talking about, but you can hold the control key and click on a space like this, and you can move your UI, and this is pretty cool, right? Same thing, yeah. So you could potentially have more stuff on this side, just fill all that and then leave a blank space to move. Anyway, that's nothing to do with what I was saying. So what I was saying, which I forgot. All right, so we have the dynamics. Yeah, so now that I have the dynamics working and I know that it's going to give me that sort of result, I'm going to click on a store morph target. So I'm going to click on store morph target. So now ZBrush remembers, or has in the memory, it has the current state of this model, right? That's how morph target works. And now I can just run the simulation until I'm happy with the folds. Great. So I think these ones are working quite nice. Let's see where else. Maybe here as well. but mostly around there. So because I stored a morph target, now I can go ahead and click on switch and then just double check different areas. So switch. Perfect. So yeah, this area, if you compare what I manually sculpted with what the dynamics gives me after I have this blocking, is more natural, right? It feels more, yeah, more natural in a way. So obviously when I was sketching, I was trying to sort of define a bit more of the musculature of this creature, the deltoid, and you know, the biceps and that sort of thing. But once I run this and I get these folds, I also you know, override some of those details, but I get that more natural feeling, like you actually have fat and, you know, tissue on top of that muscle. Is not like an écorché creature. All right. Anyway, what I was saying is, once I have this, I have two things. I have the dynamics working with the settings that I like, and I have the stored morph target, right? So I have those two states. So now what I can do is go with the masking brushes and tell ZBrush, hey, I wanna keep these. This is something that I like. All of these folds are pretty cool. They're working. They're very natural. And I'm just painting a mask in the areas that I want to keep. So all of this to me looks very interesting, right? And I can also hold Control and click once on the mask to blur it. I also have, just in case you have ever seen this thing popping up, I have some custom brush, some custom actions in the tablet. So this is part of the Wacom tablet, nothing to do with ZBrush, and you can customize it the way you want. So I have all my masking tools in here, so I can blur it, grow it, you know, hide it. You know, I have sharpen, create alpha from the mask, etc. So yeah, but it's the same as holding Control and click on the mask. All right. So now that I have masked this area, if I switch, right, ZBrush, the only thing that is going to do is take what we told ZBrush to do, which is have keep a current state of that model before we run the dynamics, and then switch between the dynamic or the simulation model and the previous one. So it's not going to keep any of those details, right? It's just going to switch between the two states. However, we have the morph slider, and the morph slider is going to respect the masking, because the morph slider is not just switching between two states. It's actually gradually going between one reference, which is what we stored, the morph target, and the new one. So I can just go ahead and do this and go back to what we had before for the rest of the model, but everything that we masked is still there. So now I can clear the mask, and now we have pretty much what we did. You know, we have the creature as we had it, but now we have these really cool areas that, of course, we can further refine, bring in the standard brush and add maybe a bit more volume here and here. But again, those are things that come after we already have that really nice sort of compression fold that works really well. So that's something that I wanted to show you guys. It's really cool, and it's just another way of using dynamics. This is what I've been sort of trying lately, just using dynamics in a different way. And I'm going to show you a couple more things with dynamics that maybe you haven't thought of, and hopefully that gives you the idea of, oh, maybe I can use dynamics in this way. All right, let's see. Oh, Juan. Great. How long? You're Juan. Nice. There's like there are a few Juans as well. So are you Juan Murillo or who? Which Juan? No worries, Marco. Hey, Comics Legend, how you doing? Good to have you here. When did you meet Daniel Bell? I haven't actually met Daniel like in person, but yeah, I've followed his content for a long time. Yeah, Juan Murillo, awesome. All right, so the other thing that I wanted to show with dynamics would be, let's go ahead and do something else. I mean, I'm going to show you something else, but I'm not going to end up using it, but it's very simple. Let's say I want to change the ears, and I want to have some sort of flappy ears. I can just mask that, go to the unmask, or to the enable unmask, basically, to run the simulation only on the mask areas. And I'm gonna just enable gravity and play simulation. Whoops, it's too much. Right, so you can end up with these sort of floppy ears. Oops. Bring in something like the cloth hook, work on brush, and then just basically make this sort of floppy ears like this. Right, so it completely changes things. Now it looks some sort of like Jar Jar Binks type of creature, which is not what I want, but just want to show you how easily it is to, you know, combine the sketch that you already have. And you know, at this point things can change completely if you're not happy with what you're seeing, and you can use dynamics to, you know, achieve something like this very quickly. How do you get the airbrush color on your model? I use polypaint for that. I will probably show you a bit more of that in just a second. I'm gonna get some water because I forgot to bring that before, so let me just undo that. We're not gonna do this type of things. You can actually add a bit of, anyway, I'll show you this in a second. I'm gonna show you how to do some nicer wrinkles, like more intentional, with this brush in this object, and then I'm gonna show you a really cool trick for the lids of this creature. All right, so let me just give me 1 second. I'll be back. I'm gonna bring some water. All right. Cool. Where were we? Yeah, brushing. Okay, cool. So yeah, with this cloth hook brush, I found it really useful to do certain things, like maybe let's add some, you know, overlapping folds here, some wrinkles for the neck. You know, very subtle movements that can create some very nice wrinkles. I think that's enough. I don't want to overdo it with the wrinkles. It's not a wrinkly rat, but you know, we can do this maybe in this area. Just push it, and you can mask things out, right? So let's say I don't want to affect any of these. I want to protect this area, and I'm just going to bring this down with this clay hook brush, and that creates those nice wrinkles again, right? And if you want to change, let's say the thickness or the the size of the wrinkles or the folds, you can change the firmness and the simulation iterations, and that's ultimately going to change, you know, the I would say the structure of the material that you're deforming. So it would make it more like a silky type or not. Just to give you an example, if I do it with firmness of 6, that's not gonna probably do anything really. Yeah, that's just gonna move things around. That's not gonna do much. Let's say firmness of 4, you get these really sort of like fat wrinkles like that. Or if I just go for 2 or 1 even, it's gonna be pretty small like this. So you can change that completely just by changing the firmness. I think 3 was fine for this creature. And because I'm using the on brush, and the on brush works with this fade border, I don't have to worry about the rest of the model. It's just concentrating in one area, right? But this is how I've been using the dynamics, right? So I use this to generate some folds and some wrinkles that look more natural. Maybe some more here. Right? But I have, like, you know, a more controlled approach to it, and then I can of course go with the damp standard brush or the standard brush and readjust or refine those. So I take advantage of the dynamic properties because that's going to give me, like I said, a more natural feel to the folds, because they're reacting to the volumes a bit better. But then of course I can just go manually and, guided by what I did with the dynamics, refine the rest, right? So there's going to be probably some tension points from the arm like that. Right, but all of these are kind of like created automatically when I do the movement with dynamics. Let's go ahead and refine these ones a bit. And I keep doing this on a relatively low res, or maybe we have 64,000, so we still, you know, it's still pretty low. Let's use the standard brush. So it's a combination of tools, really. And all of these tools, and that's what I love about ZBrush, right? All of these tools are complementary, or not complementary, they complement each other, rather. So in a way, if you're expecting to get a perfect simulation with just one click, and this is something that I said, or that I say about this process in the introduction to ZBrush 2021, which is also available in the ZBrush Guides website. You can just get it there. It's I think 6 videos when I talk about dynamics and how I use them, but it's just a matter of balancing those tools out. So it's not just a one-click operation. The same way that Zero Measure with a one single click is not going to give you a perfect topology. It gives you a really good base, and then you can tweak it to make make something more, something that works a little bit better. But it's the same thing. You need to spend the time anyway tweaking it if you want to have more control over it. All right. So yeah, hopefully you see what I mean. I use dynamics in this case to generate the base, and then I can just go with the other brushes and the sculpting brushes and refine those volumes, or that suggestion of the wrinkles that were given by the dynamics. Okay. Cool. So that definitely looks a lot better. More detail. Let's just do a quick comparison between this guy and the sketch. Right. So the left one is the one that we started with today. The second one, or the one on the right, start to feel a little bit more, again, more detail and more polished in a way, and we have all those nice wrinkles. Just realize from this angle there's something that I don't like, which is the volumes here at the back. I think they're too flat. Okay, cool. So let me see the chat, and then I'll show you the next cool process. Hey, attentive slog. Good to see you here. Good night, Nicola. Cool, thank you guys. All right, so the other trick with dynamics would be the eyelids. So this is something that I found interesting. Hopefully you guys might find it as well. So I'm gonna enable the eyes. So shows the eyes, and I'm gonna append a plane 3D. I'm gonna turn on polyframe. I'm gonna squish this slightly. Yeah, something like that. And I'm gonna do a zero measure. Perfect. I'm gonna rotate it 90 degrees, and I'm gonna do it on one side, and then I'll just mirror it to the other. Okay, so the idea is to run simulation on this plane and on top of this sphere, and because the simulation will conform to the underlying mesh or whatever it's colliding with, then we're gonna get a pretty decent eyelid, and that's not really the trick. Obviously that's pretty obvious, but the trick comes after, because we can use dynamics or the cloth brushes to adjust that eyelid, and it will kind of slide through or like along that that sphere. So that's a pretty cool way to model or sculpt the eyelids. So let's get out of the gizmo, turn off symmetry, and if I run simulation as it is right now, this is not going to do anything. It's just going to fall, right? Because I haven't told ZBrush that I want to use the current spheres or any other mesh that is visible as my colliding volumes or collision volumes. So all I have to do is click on this collision volume, and now ZBrush is going to calculate only whatever is visible, right? So if you bring in, let's say, these things and you run simulation, it's not going to be affected by them, but these spikes or the plane is not going to be affected. You actually have to recalculate if you want to include a new mesh or a new volume in the simulation. I'm going to reduce the strength of the gravity so that it doesn't go as fast, and let's click on run simulation. Okay, great. So we have a great starting point. The only thing is, let's do it again. Yep, so by default you should have this inflate at 1, and this inflate in the collision volume is basically going to tell ZBrush what's the distance between whatever you're simulating, in this case the plane, and the object that they're colliding with. So it's kind of like the collision distance between the simulation mesh and the obstacle. So I just set it to 0.1 so that we have a narrow, a smaller gap basically. All right, that's it. That's the eyelid. Great. So now we can go to the dynamic sub palette, click on dynamic, and we can turn on thickness on, just to add more thickness. And this is another great thing, right? You can just control the thickness of that eyelid from the dynamic palette. or the subdivision, dynamic subdivision, sorry. I'm gonna also turn this post subdivide and increase the smoothness, maybe add one segment, just add more thickness, right? So this is using dynamic and it's looking great. So now I can bring in my base mesh or the creature, and you see that doesn't look like an eyelid at all, right? But I can start moving and deforming this mesh to adjust that eyelid. So I can bring in the, let's say, the cloth hook brush. I was struggle to do that one. And this brush allows me to move. Let's actually, let me show you what this does. I can take this and do this, right? And manipulate this like cloth, which is great. That's exactly what I want to do. But because we ran the simulation and we told ZBrush that we want to only use the spheres at the collision as collision objects, when I bring in this, the rest of this guy as a reference, this thing is not going to collide with the mesh. It's only going to collide with the spheres, and that's exactly what I what I want to have to happen when I adjust this. So now I can start pushing this in like this, but you see it's going to conform to that sphere. Let's do the same thing here, right? And then usually maybe change the brush size, pull this down, right? And I'm not particularly interested in what's happening on inside this mesh, right? The rest is not important, because then we can just do another zero mesh of this. So now that's the eyelid. I can just pull this back like that, maybe with a large brush, push it up. So basically you can, you know, open the eyes of this guy, or like the eyelids, raise them up, just by sliding this mesh along. And I found this to be incredibly useful, right? So that's pretty cool. We have some eyelids going, and again, it's not limited to what we currently have in here. If you want, you can just run simulation again and just let it go down a little bit more. Or you can also come here and say, you know what, this eyelid is too thin, and just increase the thickness, right? And still is kind of like dynamic in that sense. Perfect. So now we have that ready. We can go ahead and do the same thing, but the other way around. So let me show you what I mean. And if you guys have any questions about that, I'll try to answer them in a second. So let's go ahead and duplicate this guy, and I'm going to turn off one. Go to the gizmo. So this is the normal gizmo, and I'm just going to rotate this around. Just move it like so. And now I can tell ZBrush, okay, recalculate with just these meshes, and I can bring in the gizmo, the transpose cloth gizmo, and I can just push this up, and of course now it is using that that sphere. Let's bring in the creature, so I can rotate things like so, and everything that I do in this point at this point is just being controlled by or dictated by that simulation. So let's just hide that bit. So that's gonna be for the bottom eyelid. There we go. The trick with this simulation, or adjusting the simulation, is do little notches. Alright, bring the rest, and I can take this guy, push it forward like so. And of course we can also bring in the move brush, just the normal brush, and maybe just adjust the shape a little bit. But I think the important takeaway, I guess, of this, maybe now it is too thick. Yeah, so the takeaway is that you can very quickly create something that works really well using dynamics, and then adjust the rest with the normal brushes. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, I mean, there's a bunch of geometry that I don't need inside. We can clean that up later, but at the moment it's alright. I'm just gonna mirror and weld those two things, so now we have eyelid on the other side, and then take this one, the main mesh, and then I'm gonna use the move brushes to adjust this and bring this closer. Okay, cool. So let's bring in the rest, right? And so this is starting to look a little bit better. I went a little bit overboard as well with the folds, or the skin folds. So now I'm using the move brush to just push things in and reveal some of those scales that we had placed before. But you'll see that at the moment I'm just doing like little notches. It's not you know, I'm not changing the silhouette. All right, let's have a look at the chat. Cool. All right, so what else can we do with this before I show you again some of the poly paint? Yes, so a rat and a pangolin, and I think those are the reference that we were using. A pangolin, a rat, and a snake as well for the head. So I'm gonna use the standard brush, and I'm gonna subdivide the base mesh, like the body, a bit more, and I'm just gonna use the standard brush again to add some volume, to add some indication of where, you know, there's some gonna be, or what the insertion of these scales would be happening. Because they need to be sort of attached to the body somehow. So if they sort of insert into the mesh somehow, and they're meant to be kind of like solid pieces, or a bit more solid than the skin. So if you think about it, when you add these things and you think about the functionality, whether it's for protection or for whatever it is, that's gonna have like some sort of, or it's gonna have an impact on the rest of the character. So in this case, the skin, which is a bit softer, is reacting to some of the pieces. So that's what I'm trying to do here with the standard brush. And with the alt key as well, you can push things in. Now I lost my tablet. Well, it lasted for a little bit. Hang on. I'm gonna have to reset the tablet. While this is happening, let me know, guys, if you have any questions, and I'll answer them while I reset the tablet. Hey Nayan, how's it going? Do you ever use the Wacom EK remote? Yep, that's what I've been using until it just stops. So that's what I use all the time. I have all the, I don't know if you can see that. Yeah. So I have all my keys in this remote. I also have a Wacom tablet, a Wacom keyboard, a Bluetooth keyboard on top of the Wacom tablet, the Cintiq. So I use that. Let's see if that works. Okay. Not great, but yeah. So let's just continue working on this guy. I feel like, oh, it's the pen that is not working now. So I don't have any right click. Hang on. Yep. All right, give me 1 second. I need to restart ZBrush. I'll be back in seconds. All right, we're back. What's the difference between decimate and decimate? So decimate is basically the opposite of decimation. Decimation will reduce the polygons. Decimate will add topology, or would add points to. It's a concept of, maybe if you ever used displacement, for example, in another software, you use decimate. You use, not decimate, sorry, tessellation, to add more points and describe more of the volume that, or more of the mesh that the displacement is displacing. So decimate is just a concept, like a name that the Pixologic guys coined in a way. So it's like decimating but tessellation. So it's like an in-between, and that is under the decimate tessellate. So this one is pretty cool because it just allows you to, with one slider, control the polygon size of your object. So if I just go decimate, ZBrush is going to, based on the polygon size that I choose here, is going to either tessellate or decimate, right? So that's why I have these two switches enabled. So if I go with a polygon size of 7, so essentially telling ZBrush I want my polygons to be really large, it's gonna apply a decimation automatically overall the entire mesh, or to the entire mesh. If I reduce this to something below 1, so 0.5, now I'm gonna tell ZBrush, hey, I wanna add, smaller pieces of polygon, and it's actually going to use that tessellation, right? So that's decimate. The name decimate is taking into account the decimation and the tessellation. So it's not really what's the difference between decimate and decimate. Is the difference is between tessellation and decimation. Tessellate is just like this weird concept in ZBrush that allows you to play with both. So you can just change the the size of your polygons dynamically. This is something that I actually teach in the ZBrush for Illustrators workshop. So this is one of the tools that we actually use to to tweak the assets for the composition, because in that course, in that workshop, the idea is to concentrate on something for illustration, so we don't need to worry too much about the underlying topology. As long as it works when you create the render, it works. So just to give you an example, if I do something like this, I'm not describing a lot of those details, right? In terms of what you can see. If I go for a comic style render, right? That doesn't really show me much. So that's when I can just reduce my polygon size, right? And start defining this. And maybe a little bit more, right? So this allows me to work on certain areas that ultimately, for the type of render that I'm using, which is the comic style, it would be better, right? But then there's certain assets that are in the distance. Like imagine that this is something really far away. We don't have to have that much details. It might be just the moon or something. Then I can use this slider to just push it to something really big, and you'll see for the most part it preserves that shape. But if you actually look at it, you have very, very low polygon because of this decimation. Yeah, so I don't know if that makes sense, but that's what the decimation is doing. So decimate is a combination of tessellation and decimation. Is it possible to make a polypainted micro mesh? Yes, it's possible. You just need to do the polypaint on the micro mesh before you add it. I haven't tried it, but I'm pretty sure. Like this, I don't see why not. It's just using the micro mesh is just using that instance of that object, so it should. As long as you have enabled polypaint in the mesh that you are applying the micro mesh. Is there any combination of brushes in ZBrush that allow you to make stylized hair without downloading IMM brush pack? Yeah, absolutely. In fact, if you go to the ZBrush Guides website and go to the resources page and the brushes, there's a free pack. I'll show you. There's a free pack that I shared called I don't know if I have it here actually. Yeah, hair. So this is free. You can download this, and it allows you to add hair, a sculpted hair. So if I want this guy to be, do hair for this guy, this is a sculpted hair. I don't know if that's what you mean. Instead of an IMM brush, you can totally do that. You can also get it from. I'll show you. I'll give you the link. It's a free one. By the way, so I reached 40,000 subscribers, followers on Instagram. So as a kind of like a celebration thing, I'm running, I think until 12 or 1 p.m. for me. So a couple more hours. There is everything in this store is 50% off. If you wanna grab anything, you can use the. I'll give you the code in a second. You can use Pablander 40K and the K with capital to get 50% off anything that you want in this little store. It's not much anyway, but this is the one that I'm using, sculpting hair, so it's free. You can just click on that and download. There are 12 different brushes to sculpt this type of hair. So let's get in there. Yeah. So these are the 12 brushes that you can download. You don't have to use IMM brushes. This actually is sculpted details in the mesh. Obviously, you need to have a dense mesh to describe some of those details. But yeah, the rest of this stuff, like the clay pack, the fiber mesh rooming kit, the skin brushes, all of that, everything that you want from this site is right now at 50% discount to celebrate for the next, I think, since yesterday for 24 hours. So I reckon for 2 more hours it should work. And the code, I'll put it in the chat. So that's the code. You can use that for 50%. No, the comic course is not part of that. So that is not in the ZBrush guide. In the ZBrush guide's website, that is part of the 3D concept artist. So same but different. So that one is not part of it. What is ZBrush? Standard. Okay. How are we doing with time? Yeah, plenty of time. So I'm gonna use this standard brush to sharpen some of these crevices. Just accentuate the falls a bit. Maybe add some. I don't want to make it like super realistic, as in, you know, have a bunch of wrinkles. Just to keep it within the style, the more cartoonish, Pokemon-like type of thing. But I do want to have maybe some more definition here. Alright, so I'm just using the clay brush, the normal clay brush, to adjust some of these volumes. This is what I would refer to as, you know, refining secondary shapes, purely because I'm not actually changing the silhouette as much. All I'm doing is refining some of the volumes that are already in the primary shape. So if I wanna, like, for me, primary shapes, of course, is something that would alter the silhouette of the character, but I'm pretty happy with those primary shapes. So this is just not detailing, but tweaking the secondary shapes. So I'm using the clay brush for that, and I'm using a lot of the smooth brush. So every time that I add a little bit of clay, in a way, or add a bit of volume, I use the smooth brush. So this one will be great for adding some volume around here, kind of like fat deposits on top of the eye. Now let's refine this area as well. So yeah, this refinement process is a lot of the same. So clay buildup, smooth brush. I also use the Alt key to just push things in. Maybe you can bring in the standard brush, and with a smaller brush size we can refine some of these borders for the mouth. But always smoothing things out. Alright, maybe here in the neck. And if for some reason you already sort of reach a point where when you're smoothing it doesn't really smooth anything because there are like too many polygons, you can use the smooth strong, which also comes with ZBrush. But I think I can still see the effect of the normal smooth brush, so I don't need to change. Let's see, for example, here, I don't know if you can see that. Change the material. Around here, even if I press the smooth brush, it's not doing it as fast, so I can use the smooth stronger, and then just gonna smooth things a lot faster. and that allows me to work even at this level of subdivision, which I have 4 million polygons, to add volume and then maintain everything clean by smoothing things out. And here I'm going to go ahead and bring in the dam standard. I want to refine those nice folds that we created with dynamic, just to accentuate that compression. And this is where we can make use of the polygroups that I mentioned at the beginning, or towards the beginning, based on the topology that we created. So I can just go back to the lowest subdivision level and tell ZBrush that I want to isolate with the select lasso, hold Control and Shift. Yeah, maybe isolate that. Let's auto group, bring back the rest, or auto group this, or let's actually group visible. Let's go back to the high subdivision level, right? So now I can hold Control and Shift, select just this, go into solo mode, and I can, you know, have more control over this, so that I don't have the rest of the body on the way, and I can refine this with more care. So in general speaking, this is a workflow. This is the steps that I follow once I have a cleaner mesh like I do have now. It doesn't have to be perfect, as long as, you know, it has squats and it's cleaner than a Dynamesh. I can do this. That's not to say that you can stay in Dynamesh for a long time and just keep redynameshing with a high resolution, but I just find this process to be easier, especially when you want to achieve something more stylized, that where you want to keep like very clean and smoother surfaces. That would be my preferred method. All right. So this is looking good. Let's see. Whoops. Too strong. Just gonna refine these volumes a bit more in here. And I'm gonna bring in the trim dynamic just to flatten some areas. I want to emphasize this plane a bit more. And if I want to sort of tighten this up a bit, like the mouth, I can use the inflate brush. There we go. Cool. All right, let's see the chat. And what kind of software do you use for rigging? I don't do rigging at all. If I had to, I would use Maya, because that's how I learned to do rigging when I learned to do it. But you know, I learned rigging like the very complicated way a long time ago. You know, like at the time that nerves were even like a big thing. So nowadays I'm pretty sure they're like much better tools than what I used to use, so I don't even worry about that. When I'm doing like a concept, for example, or presenting something for a client that I need to, you know, perhaps pose the character, or yeah, maybe just do a tiny little animation to put the character in context and show a bit more of the personality of the character, I use Mixamo, because it just has a wide range of, you know, a library of animation that is pretty cool. I also use Character Creator 3, but that one is just for kind of like humanoid characters or human or humanoid creatures type of thing. That is like with, you know, arms and legs, like 2 limbs and 2 arms and 2 legs. So it's limited in that way, but it's pretty cool. You can create, you know, very quick animations using iClone as well. So it really depends. It's not something that I do, to be honest. I wouldn't even bother. I think the best thing that I ever rigged was a box, and it was really complex. But I've been trying to use ZBrush for weeks now, and I straight up don't understand it sometimes. And to be honest, that was me a few years ago. When I first started with ZBrush, it was, you know, pretty complex software for me. So I know the feeling. I'm actually going to release a free workshop pretty soon. I'll let you guys know. It's a free workshop about sculpting, but it's about sculpting rather than what tools I'm going to be using. And all the tools that I'm going to be using are free tools. So I'm going to use the free version of ZBrush, which is ZBrush Core Mini, which is super simple. And I'm going to walk, if you take it, I'm going to walk you through the entire process of sculpting a creature, and then I'm going to use Blender as a render engine just to quickly you know, create a presentation render for that creature. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, and just maybe learn a little bit more about the general workflow and the process, and understanding things like primary shapes, balance between details, and that sort of thing, maybe you might be interested in that as well. And also there's going to be a course, like a pretty big course that I'm been working on for the past 3 or 4 years, called the Ultimate ZBrush Guide course, and that's going to be available hopefully very soon as well. And that's going to be, that's going to be all about a more systematic approach to learning ZBrush. So it's slightly different from probably any other software or course that you have seen online, because it's not necessarily about how to do a specific thing. We do a pretty cool character in the course, and I will be showing you guys a bit more of that soon. But the main focus of the program is on the methodology and how to learn ZBrush, and the kind of like the thinking behind learning ZBrush. And it's something that you can apply to any other software. That's really how I, you know, when I take something like Blender, which I've never used before, and, you know, and produce something that looks, you know, to me that looks cool, that is the same approach that I take, right? And that's what I teach in this course. It's essentially how to learn a software, really, but obviously is focused on ZBrush because it is a, you know, it's a pretty weird software. The first time that sort of you pick it up and you don't know exactly how things work, you can just get frustrated because it might be a bit weird. But that is the entire purpose of that course, not curse. And yeah, it's hopefully it's gonna be helpful, and it's aimed for absolute beginners. So if you already have some experience with ZBrush, it might be too basic, because I'm gonna go for, like, I'll explain everything from the, you know, how ZBrush came about, right, from the early papers in ZGraph, just to understand a little bit of the how ZBrush is such a, you know, such a massive tool in the industry, and how it came about and all of that. So I talk about all of that in that course. So it gives you a deeper understanding of what ZBrush is and what to expect, how to use it, all of that. So I think hopefully it's going to be helpful, especially for anyone new that wants to get into the, you know, the ZBrush world and 3D sculpting in general, and also have some insight into how to learn a complicated software, which is not complicated, but I know it looks a bit daunting, like ZBrush. Once you understand the principles and the basics, it's actually really easy, and then you can do things very quickly. And that's why, if you think about it, the professionals in the industry that use ZBrush can whip up like concepts very quickly in, you know, in a day, something that looks really polished, because the tools that you have at your disposal in ZBrush is, you know, there for that. So hopefully that makes sense. Imagine a 3D print of this character. Yeah, it would be cool. I have a 3D printer sitting right next to me that I haven't used. I have the Formlabs too. I have a little bit of resin, but due to the pandemic, I cannot find isopropyl alcohol anywhere, so I cannot test it. Plus, I'm in a semi-confined space here, so I don't have, you know, the fumes of the printing are not good. So I haven't actually done it, but I really want to get into it. All right, we have about 20 minutes. I'll answer some of the questions that you guys have in there, but I'm gonna jump into refining some of the polypaint and add polypaint to the areas that I haven't done it. You know, maybe change things a bit. I'm not sure. I kind of like the color of this guy, but we'll see what we can do. Just double check. Yep, cool. I'm gonna go into the standard brush. I'm gonna turn it into a polypaint brush, and this is for I forgot who asked this, but this is how I airbrush that color. So you can use, oops, right? This is how you paint in ZBrush basically. All right, so I'm gonna start by selecting these eyelids, and actually those eyelids are still dynamic, so I'm gonna apply dynamic so that I actually have enough geometry, and I'm gonna go ahead and paint that. Oops, symmetry. Okay, and we can paint some, maybe let's paint the eyes first, and I'll show you another cool technique. This is something that I've shown in the past, but it's good to do a recap. I'm gonna clear this one, and I'm gonna delete hidden. So now I have a single mesh here, and I think this is, yeah, this is just a sphere, right? And I'm gonna assign maybe, let's just leave it as a skin color. All right. And what I'll do with this left or right eye for the character is to work on this, or like enable local symmetry just for this guy. So the local symmetry is here for you guys, should be on the transform palette, this one right here, and this will basically take ZBrush is going to read the entire volume and it's going to center it right in the middle. And because this mesh is just a sphere, is symmetrical, if you put the middle point or the pivot point right in the middle, it's going to be symmetrical. So I can enable that, and now I can bring in symmetry and work with radial symmetry on the z-axis, because that's towards what it's pointing to. And then I can go ahead and start painting something for this creature. So I'm going to start with a kind of like the blood vessels. I'm going to increase the radial count to 32 or something large, so it's faster. I want to make it red. Okay. And now we can go for a very like yellowish gray color for the sclera, something like 30. I'm going to reduce the RGB intensity quite a bit so that I also have more control over that. All right. Just a tiny bit, maybe a bit darker. And I'm gonna subdivide this maybe 3 times and delete lower. This is a pretty clean mesh as well, so I can just recover that subdivision. I just wanna work with a bit more resolution and smooth this color. All right, let's go ahead and bring in a darker, maybe, let's see, like a brown color. and that's going to be the pupil. It's going to be a pretty big, not the pupil, sorry, the iris. It's going to be pretty big. And let's go ahead and define the edge with a darker color. The actual color of the iris might be different, might be a different color, maybe a bright orange or something. But I start with a darker color. Now we can use maybe a red, orangey. And I'm just establishing the palette at this point. Oops. Okay, so let's see. Are you in Dynamesh now? No. I'm already in subdivision. Where will your workshop follow you? Oh, the workshop, I haven't actually released it, but if you're part of my email list, I will let you know once it's ready. It will be part of the 3D Concept Artist website, so you can check that out as well. If you go there, there should be a link, and I'll just send the link to your email once you sign up. This one here. So if you go to the 3D Concept Artist, this series for illustrators is what I was talking about before, earlier on in today's lesson. If you go here at the bottom, not this one, sorry, at the top where it says subscribe, right? You can click subscribe here. Go to 3dconceptartist.com, click subscribe, and it will take you to a page where you just put your name, email, and you'll be subscribed to the newsletter. You have you'll receive an email to confirm that you're gonna be part of the email list. My internet is pretty slow right now, but yeah, just go to that link. I can also share it here. Maybe you can just click on that and register. I don't know why it's too slow. Or you can also use the ZBrush Guides website. There's also a subscription form in there. Hang on. Okay. Right. So from here you can subscribe. I mean, the 3D Concept Artist website and the ZBrush Guides, they're both my website, so it's the same list. I share tips that are related to both anyway, and then you get tips every now and again. So this is what you can put your name and email. Click on this and subscribe. That's it. What about Blender for rigging? Yeah, probably. It's not something that I wanna get into really. The rigging, it's something too technical for me. I'm not a fan. Yes, please always share links so mistakenly sign up for other things. Not sure what you mean about other things. You can just go to the website that I show. That will subscribe you to the email list that I share everything in there. You can unsubscribe at any point if you don't like the tips that I share, but I try to send like interesting tips every week or so. All right, so let's go ahead and turn this down to maybe 9. And now to add the details of the iris, I tend to use a radial count with odd numbers so that it looks less symmetrical, and I can start bringing some more vibrant colors with a smaller brush size. All right, so that's just to create that sort of iris. Let's bring some yellow and maybe turn on this down to 5. Maybe go down to 3. And at this point we can turn off symmetry and work with some, maybe, how many points we have. Subdivide one more time. And just start adding some featured details here. And you can also do this, whatever I'm doing, you can also do it with sculpted details rather than polypaint if you want. And that is if you wanna, again, it depends on what you wanna do with this at the end, but like for instance, if you wanna render this a bit more realistically, you can have some sculpted details with color in this eye, and then have another sphere on top of this one where you're gonna add maybe some transparent and reflective color, material, sorry, in whatever render engine you use, and then that's gonna complete the effect. But in this case, for this concept, I can achieve the same result just by painting those details, because you're not gonna get too close to this guy anyway. And then yeah, so I paint the details, and then this is gonna be a pretty perfect sphere, so I can apply like a glossy material, and you're gonna end up with the same effect. Hopefully we have 10 minutes, so I'll show you what I mean in a second. We'll fire up Keyshot very quickly, and I'll demonstrate that. All right, I'm gonna select something like a bright color here. So I set the bases with some sort of like symmetry, but then once I have the symmetrical pattern, then I try to break that by using this, non-symmetrical painting technique. So I'm sort of faking that kind of like depth of the eye, and I can also use something, let's say just a brighter yellow color to add some highlight at the bottom, just very subtle, and maybe some highlights as well. And this is just to fake that idea that the iris itself is kind of like a concave shape. So if you have a light coming from the top, which in most cases you will, like it's the most natural state of things. So like if you go out to the park, the sun is going to be obviously always above you if it is day. So because of the concave nature of the iris, you're going to catch more light, let's say around this area, and in the same way you would, the top area would be kind of like in shadow. So I'm going to use a bluish tone at the top, dark color as well, just to darken the top bit. So you see there is that contrast between these dark, more dull colors at the top and the brighter ones here. And then just to wrap up, let's select the radial symmetry again with a radial count of 32. I don't know why I choose 32. There's no specific reason. I'm used to it. And then I'm selecting a black color. I'm gonna make a large pupil. Right? So this is more, this is kind of like a creature eye. I think it works. Let's see if I do a tiny one. Maybe this is more like a dragon type of thing. Let's do a smaller pupil. All right. So now I'm going to turn off the symmetry, and I'm going to go ahead and rotate this guy out. Oops, let me first make sure that I have this on the center. Right? And I think it works. If anything, let's make it a bit bigger. All right. And if you want to get a highlight within ZBrush, you can just select the toy plastic material and make sure that you have the material selected, just material, fill object, and now you have that highlight in there. So I don't have any subdivision levels because I've been just subdividing and deleting. So I'm gonna mirror and weld, or yeah, let's just do mirror and weld. So now, whoops, undo that. I have symmetry enabled. I have the local symmetry enabled, mirror and weld, like so. If I want to get back to the subdivision levels, I can reconstruct that. Let's get into solo mode so you see what's happening. So I can reconstruct the subdivision levels, just because again, this is kind of like what we started with, and it's a pretty clean mesh. So ZBrush has no issues reconstructing this back to this level. So now I have subdivision levels and I have all my details in there. And that is pretty much it. How are we doing with time? Yeah, 5 minutes. I'm going to show you the I would set this up quickly in Keyshot, but I want to select this guy as well. Select a darker color. I'm just going to refine the poly paint. On these areas. I'm gonna go for a more orange color for these floppy ears, just so that they have more contrast with the more darker and red spikes, so they stand out a little bit more. All right, I think we are done with this creature. We can send it to Keyshot. So let me just do that. We have about 5 minutes, so we can wrap today's session with just a quick render in Keyshot, just to show you what I would do at this point as a as a presentation render. No worries, Javin, glad you like them. Cool. All right, no worries. Thanks, Anastasia. All right, so I will go ahead and click on Keyshot. With everything that I have at this point, 4 million polygons. It's fine. It's gonna be fine. And I'm gonna click BPR. It's gonna send everything that I have here. Everything that I have visible at this point is gonna send it to Keyshot. Might take a little bit of time to just set this up. All right, so there it is, the creature in ZBrush. I will just maybe add another environment because this is kind of like a more flat lighting. Sometimes I prefer to have a bit more contrast. So let's just grab something like that. Right, and go to the environment. I'm gonna change this to color so that I don't see the environment. This is just a quick presentation render. I'm gonna isolate the eyes, and this is what I was going to show you. I'm gonna bring in a material. I can use something with translucency, depending on, if you want to go for a more realistic approach, I would do that. But just for the sake of time, so that it renders in real time a little bit faster, I'm gonna use something like a plastic shiny, and I'm gonna hold the Alt key on my keyboard and drag this on top. So holding the Alt key, it just preserves the poly paint. If I just click and drag like this without holding Alt, it's going to override that. So holding Alt will preserve the poly paint, and you'll see you have that reflection. I'm going to double click that material, go to the texture palette. I'm going to click on upgrade to new node and apply matcap. So now I have the pure material, the pure color that came from ZBrush, rather than applying that matcap of the skin shade. Let's go to the other parts. So now the eye is kind of like reflecting. I can move around the environment and you'll see that reflection in there. And now again, just for the sake of rendering this fast, I would use a skin material, but let's just use another one for this guy here. Right, and then double click that, make it a bit rough so it's not reflecting as much. All right, so now I can just start playing with the lighting a little bit more. Maybe this environment doesn't give me that highlight that I'm looking for. Right, something like this. And then I can bring in the environment, the editor. I can bring in a new light, position that as a kind of like a rim light, add a bit of brightness here, tiny bit of color. And of course I'm going a lot faster here. This is, for example, some of the things that I go in a lot more depth in the Extra Mile course, and just talk about the principles of lighting and all of that. All right, so I can just let this one rest up, maybe change the camera, make it a bit more cartoonish by flattening the perspective a bit, and let it rest up, and that's it. No worries, guys. Thank you so much. Cool. All right, so I'm glad that you guys find this useful, and you know, some of those tips are things that you will find with time, you know, overall as you progress in your ZBrush journey in a way, and understand certain tools. Like that's what I personally enjoy the most, like finding tools that are like that most people would use in a particular way, and I try to find like a different way to use them, and then I share that, and those and you know, other artists, you guys as well, would take that and create something that I didn't think of. So it's kind of like a never-ending loop. Then I can take that as a reference, and then, oh, this is an interesting way to do it, and I keep refining these type of things, and that's how I come up with, with all of these little tricks and things that ultimately might be just a you know, oh, forgot to add for the eyelids actually. So this guy, let's call it skin. There we go. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Awesome. All right. And just to wrap up today's session, guys. So I've got a few questions about the Extra Mile. I did a private opening just for the people in the email list. So that opening for the enrollment closed yesterday, but I will be. Oh, hey Alejandro, how you doing, man? I will be opening the Extra Mile probably next month, depending on how I go with the current students and all of that. I might be opening that next month or early next month. So, and that will be more of a public opening. So if you guys are interested in taking that, I will also let you know if you're part of the email list. So also I'm gonna be doing a Q&A in Instagram. So if you guys have any other questions about something else, how I stay inspired, how, you know, what books I read and that sort of thing, I'm happy to also answer those things. Perfect. All right, guys, so I'm gonna leave it there. Hopefully you enjoyed today's session, and I'll be sharing this online as well, so you can have a look at this final render. You can just do a screenshot and finish it there. Perfect. All right, guys, so I'll see you next week. Next week, yeah, there's a week that I cannot make it, but yeah, next week should be fine. Live on Instagram, yeah, I don't think it's live. I've never done one, so I just want to do one because some people ask me, so I will just do it and see what happens. All right, guys, I'll see you next time. Cheers.